Hi, I'm Boris Blade. I'm the host of Strange But Harmless. Let's talk about mincemeat pie. As I was sitting here at dinner eating my dessert, a small piece of Gardner's mincemeat pie, you know Gardner pie. They're pumpkin pies that graced our Thanksgiving table on more than one occasion over the years. They used to be here in town. That reminds me of a story I'm fond of telling. I keep telling you that I grew up in the middle of America. Well, I did. We weren't rich by any stretch of the imagination, but we weren't poor either. You've heard of upper middle class? Well, that wasn't us. Lower middle class? Guess again. We were like, we were what I like to call middle class. Well, at least until the B&W went on strike. Then times got tough. You know, times are tough when the union hall are giving you shoes for school and you're eating a lot of GGC sandwiches. You know, grilled government cheese. And I loves me some government cheese. Ain't that why it's called American cheese? Also, I also remember many of dinners consisting of nothing more than skillet fried potatoes. I had to drown them in ketchup, or is it catsup, for both sides of that argument. Now, be nice. Anywho, I had to drown them just to get them down. You see, I'm a very finicky eater. Always have been. As a child, I went to bed without dinner so often I couldn't eat a lot of food because they gagged me. No soup, stew, chili, no cooked vegetables, fish, stuffed anything, peppers, cabbage, you name it, I would not eat it. I would mostly eat just fried chicken, hamburgers, french fries, of course, frozen breaded fish, but only deep fried, and spaghetti. Dad's spaghetti. It got to the point that I was getting sick. I didn't know I was getting sick. I vaguely remember a doctor coming to the house. He told mom and dad they needed to do whatever it took to get me to eat. So for years, if I didn't like what mom made for dinner, I would get whatever meat was served with 4 slices of bread, mustard, ketchup, or catsup, whatever, and cheese at my plate, and I'd have sandwiches. If it was not possible, like when she served stew or soup, she would fry me up a couple of burgers. Or I would take 4 hot dogs and put them on the big carving fork and just cook them over the burner myself. I did eventually gain weight, but was always very skinny as a child. Now, as an adult, I blew up like a fat cow. I've been working on that, though. Since all that crap started in my life a few years ago, I've been struggling, but I never gained back any of that 120 pounds I lost 2 years ago until recently when my job started screwing with me again. Now I'm back up about 20, but I'll take it off. So, if I'm such a finicky eater, why do I like so many things that most people don't like? I love fruitcake. Most people I ask can't stand it. I love Lebanon bologna. Most people don't even know what it is, let alone like it. I used to eat peanuts in the shell. Not so strange, you say? I mean shell and all. I love burnt peanuts, burnt cheese, mincemeat pies. I love mincemeat pies. It's strange, all of these can be traced back to Dad, too. He could and would eat anything. He loved Braunschweiger, that's goose liver, pickled eggs, hot peppers, the hotter the better. His co-workers used to bring him home canned peppers to see whose were the hottest. And I've seen him eat peppers so hot he would literally, and I know what the word means, he would literally instantly break out in a cold sweat. His favorite breakfast was pancakes or waffles with mustard, fried eggs, horseradish, the real stuff, not the sauce, and he'd top it off with hot pepper rings, the hottest he could find. I used to gag just watching him make it. He did that with fried potatoes, too. I remember once he got some horseradish sauce in his eye. Without thinking, he wiped his eye with the hand that just held hot pepper rings. Tears were just running down his face. Us kids were quietly laughing, very quietly. Now, about that mincemeat pie. I was around 17, and we were doing our annual basement cleaning. The whole family would participate. My oldest brother was in the Army, so we were down a man. Mom and Dad were cleaning out the pantry for the first time in, well, the first time I could ever remember. I mean, the home canned section of it. You know, the dark corners and the top shelves where you put all the home canned crap people gave you, at least the stuff nobody wanted. Or, in this case, the forgotten treasures. Dad found hidden amongst the pickles and carrots and pickled eggs, corn and beets, all the stuff that they were pouring down the basement drain. Boy, the smell of 10-year-old pickled anything made me want to barf. Just thinking about it makes me want to gag to this day. But the treasure they found was well worth it. Dad had found 2 jars of Grandma's homemade mincemeat, and they were about 22 years old. They had 1955 written on a piece of tape on one of the lids. Mom wanted to throw them down the drain with all the culinary flotsam and jetsam going in the sewer. When Dad opened one and dared to smell it, he went, mmm, instead of ew. Then he did the unthinkable. He dipped his finger in the juice and stuck it in his mouth. He said, hey, that still tastes good. Mom just gave him that look. We all know that look. Boys and men have been getting that look as long as girls and women have been giving it. He just shrugged and said, you know how much I loved Mom's mincemeat pie. Grandma had been dead for around 14 years by then. Mom said, okay, but only you get to eat it. I'm not risking the kids. I chimed in rather excitedly. I want some. I like mincemeat pie too. Dad said, you won't like this pie. It's real mincemeat pie. It has pork and beef in it. I said, I don't care. I want some of Grandma's pie. Well, the next day, Mom made 2 mincemeat pies. Dad did let me try it, just to bite it first. It was so savory and sweet at the same time, and so rich in flavor. Thinking back on it now, I believe it had started to ferment. It had a slight tangy kick that you could feel in the back of your throat. Boy, it was the best pie I think I've ever had. And that's saying a lot. My other grandma lived on a working farm in Virginia and made the best chocolate and butterscotch pies I've ever had. This beat those hands down. Well, that bite turned into a small piece of my own. I loved it. I'd give about anything to have another bite of that pie today. I ended up helping Dad eat both of the pies, but I only got like 3 pieces out of 2 pies. I don't think that was fair. As most anyone who eats mincemeat pies today knows, it's got all kinds of fruit and dates and raisins that the old-fashioned mincemeat had, but none of the meat. Most of the savory is left out. Oh, they try to make up for it with spices, but you can only do so much with spices. How many of you like mincemeat pie? What is your favorite pie? What other food do you like that most people don't eat at all? Drop me a comment. Well, that's enough about pie. So here's how I shook Howard Stern's hand. It was June of 1994, a handful of days prior to my birthday. I was a huge Howard Stern fan. I listened every morning on Cleveland's 98.5 WNCX. I got to the west bank of the flats 2 hours early. I wanted a good spot to watch the shenanigans, and shenanigans there would be. But I wasn't the only one to have that idea. When I got there were a couple thousand people already milling around. I remember most of the morning, though I did get high all the way to Cleveland. It was a 45-minute drive from home. I called off work sick so I could go. I took my binoculars with me. They were fake binoculars that held 8 ounces of fluid in each side. That morning, it held 100 proof fireballs. That was 16 ounces of liquor. I'd been looking forward to this since long before they announced it. Every Howard Stern fan knew of the famous funerals that he threw, and boy did Howard Stern know how to put the fun in funeral. I remember girls sitting on guys' shoulders lifting their shirts and showing off what God gave them. I remember a giant buzzard in the rigging of the lights and a guy almost falling trying to knock it down. An engineer from WMMS cut the feed to the satellite truck, shutting down the on-air show for a while. He was arrested and eventually got 10 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. I would have thought it would have been a federal offense. It was a crazy morning. They had a giant cyclops to represent John Lanigan. Stuttering John's band played, and they were not nearly as bad as I thought they would be. There were many guests from his show. More than one Miss Howard Stern showed up. Roia Wallace from the Miss Howard Stern pageant was present. She was the one who sang Fuck the President. Kenneth Keith Kallenbach was there, as well as Fred the Elephant Boy, of course. Melrose Larry Green was also there. Lots of Howard Stern's Whack Pack showed up. America sang a Baba Booey parody song to the tune of A Horse with No Name, and a special request from Howard, I Need You. Howard slow danced with Robin on that one. Nils Lofgren played guitar for a song Howard sang. Roger Clinton, that's President Clinton's brother, sang Feeling All Right. Diamond David Lee Roth was his normal flamboyant self. He did his songs I'm Just a Gigolo and Jump. Humble Pie closed out the show with their song 30 Days in the Hole. Well, I wandered around for a few minutes watching where Howard and his entourage went. They were standing in front of Tiffany's Cabaret, a strip club. I headed that way. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had to do something. I saw a guy duck under the branches of a huge pine tree. I followed him in. We greeted each other with head nods and smiles. We were about 10 feet from Howard and his group, including 2 Cleveland police officers and Howard's bodyguard. We were on a hill about 5 feet above the group. The guy beside me said, let's go, and started down the hill. I watched as he headed straight for Howard Stern. I watched as Howard Stern's bodyguard threw him to the ground, and the 2 cops grabbed him, and all 3 of them walked him away. As soon as the cops and the bodyguard were out of sight, I made my move. I slid down the hill, took 3 big steps, and was right in front of Howard Stern. I didn't even hesitate. I grabbed his hand, shook it twice, and said, "Glad to meet you." Now you would think I could come up with something better than that, but there it is. I immediately let go of his cold, clammy feeling hand, turned, and started to run. Baba Booey tried to grab me. I lowered my shoulder and plowed past him, knocking him into Stuttering John, almost knocking them both down. Robin Quivers just stood there, quivering. I took off and didn't look back. I ducked into the crowd and disappeared. Eventually, I made my way around to the back of the club, by the dock. Roya Williams was back there playing her guitar for change. She was wearing a Howard Stern for Governor button. I paid $5 to get a picture with her and talked her into giving me the badge. I was bullshitting with her. She was trying to get me to give her a ride back to New York. Fred the Elephant Boy must have overheard, because the next thing I know, he's in my face talking about he was going to give her a ride back home. I could barely understand him because of his speech impediment, and boy, his breath was awful. He tried to push me out of the way. I just stood there. Back then I was 6'2" and 340 pounds. Then he came at me with his arms flailing. I think he was trying to fight with me. I just stepped aside and let him go right past me. It must have looked like something out of a comedy movie. He went past me and was heading straight for the edge of the dock. I grabbed him by the tail of his shirt just to keep him from falling in the river. There had already been one guy get too drunk and fall in the river that morning. He turned and pointed at me and started screaming, "He pushed me! He tried to push me in the river!" People were starting to look at me, so I figured it was time to get the hell out of Dodge before someone recognized me as the guy who, quote, assaulted Howard Stern. By that time, most of the crowd was gone. I made a beeline back to my car, hopped in, and got the hell out of Dodge. Well, that's how I shook Howard Stern's hand, and that's the end of tonight's episode. I'm Boris Blade, and as always, I'm strange but harmless.